Right. Thank you for the moderator for giving me the time for my speech. First of all, although I've been introduced by the moderator itself, allow me to give you a little of my name. So, my name is Kevin Atel. I am a professor in the Cornell University. My majoring is I'm more interested in literary theory, but I also teach in English. Yeah, so in basic English and everything, because in my opinion, English is important. So without further ado, let's start just the material that I have prepared and going to bring to you. Give me a second. All right, can you guys see the screen? Sorry. Okay. So let's start. So writing comparative response. Sorry. So in this material today, we will talk about writing comparative response because comparative response it is basic of the English, and it is so important for us to compare something whenever we want to respond on someone's conversation. Let's start with the lesson of the objective. So in this lesson, we will examine the language and structure of comparison response. Then we plan and write our own comparison short answer response. So as stated here, this thing is what we're going to do in this discussion today. So the content there will be an introduction of the material, and then we're going to talk about the focus of the comparison. And then third, we're going to talk about types of comparison that we're going to use later. And then last but not least is types of comparison response structure, which is there's two, which is block method and interrogated method. So introduction. To compare means to consider the similarities and differences between two things. Comparison text makes us more aware of how different authors have constructed and represented the same content or subjects in different ways for different purposes. We can also consider how the same textual convention has been used in different effects in this comparative response. So, the focus of comparisons. There are a number of ways that we can start to compare text, but your focus will depend on what the question is asking. We might be asked to compare one, techniques, convention, language feature, stylistic features, or structural features. There is also theme, issues, ideas, representations, perspective, and purpose. Also, there's reader, viewer, or audience response, which is the intellectual or emotional. We have influence of context, which includes historical, social, culture, and etc. And lastly, influence of genre or adherence to generate conventions. So, types of comparisons. Generally, we can split a comparison question into three types. There are one, subject focus, which involve comparing how two texts represent the same subject in similar or different ways. There is affect focus, which is involved comparing how two texts create certain effects or position, and audience to respond in similar or maybe in different ways. And third is the tactic focus, which is involved comparing how the same or different techniques or conventions are used into text. So we are going to compare and compare and compare in this discussion. I'm sorry. So using comparative language, these are the important words or phrases to use so that it's clear to the reader that you are making a comparison rather than writing about two texts separately. You can use this I have stated here. You can just screenshot it, or you guys take a note of it. So we have like, unlike, this is mirrored by, just as, however, in different way. or we have equally, rather, similarly. We have a lot of comparative language, comparative word that we can use to compare something. Because when we use a comparative language or word, our response or our text become much more complex and much more professional in these modern days. So go ahead and take a screenshot. I will give you, I guess, 5 seconds, or if you want to take a note of it. No? Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's move on. So, types of response structure. The easiest way to construct a comparative response is to discuss one text first and then the others. And we call this as a block method that I mentioned first in the introduction section. Alternatively, you can jump back and forth between text by structuring each paragraph around a point of comparison and giving example from both texts. We call this is the interrogated method. So the following slide will outline structure of short answer response for each of the two methods that I mentioned above. If writing an essay, you would like to extend each structure with multiple paragraphs to make it more interesting. So let's go ahead to the block method. When we are going to use the block method in paragraph 1 of text 1, there are three key points that we have to remember. First one is clear point sentence, outlining focus on the paragraph in relation to the question. So the second is identify example of techniques or convention to support, or using correct meta language and giving direct quotes example where possible. The third is explain the effect clearly and specifically and link back to the question. In the paragraph 2 or text 2, we have 4 major keynote that we have to again remember. The first one is you have to ensure how to use comparative language to make it clear you are making a comparison between two sentences or two, I don't know, information, I guess. So we have to the next is we have to clear point sentence outlining focus on the paragraph relation, same as the paragraph in text 1. We have to identify example of techniques, as I mentioned in the paragraph 1, and then again we have to explain the effect clearly and more accurately and specifically, and link back the state information back to the question. So this is integrated method. As for the integrated method, we in paragraph 1 or in block text, not just one first text and two text. No, we are going to focus on both texts at the same time. So we have to clear point sentence outlining a point comparison between the two texts, example of similarity or a difference. I'm sorry. We have to identify examples of techniques or convention from text 1 to support and to use correct meta language and give a direct example and explain the effects clearly. The third is we have to identify the example of techniques or convention from text 2 to support. We have to use, again, correct meta language, give direct example, and we have to explain the effects. In paragraph 2, it is actually the same as the paragraph 1. The keynote point is almost same, which you can right here. We have to clear the point sentence outlining a second point of comparison. We have to identify example of techniques or convention from text 1 to support, and then we have to identify example of techniques or convention from text 2 to support. And don't forget to explain and give a direct example in the both text 1 and text 2, and we have to explain the effects clearly so that our audience can understand what are we comparing. Okay, so I guess that's all. But this is not the end. Clearly, I have another material that I will bring to you. But I guess I want you guys, every audience here, to compare our text now. So, as I stated in this PowerPoint, I have stated the major of the keynote and how to properly compare our text and how do we use the meta language, how we use the word on comparison. So, to compare first, we have to perform a subject-focused comparison by creating a Venn diagram to compare the ideas, issues, perspective, or perhaps representation of a subject in your two texts. Secondly, we have to perform a technique-focused comparison by creating a Venn diagram to compare the use of specific techniques or convention to construct these subjects. So go ahead. Perhaps I will give you around 3 days, 2 days. I will state my email later. I want to see how you guys compare your text, how I want to see your skills on comparing text. So you can go ahead and send your work on comparing the text in my email, and I will gladly to check them, and I will giving a comments about them. So for the first material, that's all for comparison text. Nextly, we have another material that I will brought to you that will, of course, help us on bringing our English and improving our English and how to write, how to make an essay perfectly, how to compare, as I stated before. And the next material will be have a connection with this. So thank you for listening for the first one. I will give it back to the moderator. Moderator, thank you very much.